I offered my son our guest house. My stepdaughter trashed it out of jealousy. Now my husband is living in a hotel and our family is falling apart. I'm Sarah, 42F, and I've been married to Mark, 45M, for 8 years. Our blended family situation is complicated, to say the least. I have a son, Ethan, 22M, from my previous marriage to David, who passed away when Ethan was 10. Mark has a daughter, Zoe, 24F, from his first marriage to Linda. David and I met in college and married young. We were blissfully happy and had Ethan when I was 20. David was a successful investment banker, and we lived comfortably. However, our world shattered when David was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer when Ethan was 8. He fought hard for 2 years, but ultimately lost his battle, leaving Ethan and me devastated. David had always been meticulous about financial planning. He left us well provided for, with a substantial life insurance policy and investments. He also left our family home in both my and Ethan's names, wanting to ensure Ethan's future security. It was his way of taking care of us even after he was gone. After David's death, Ethan and I leaned on each other heavily. We went to grief counseling together and slowly learned to navigate our new reality. I threw myself into being both mom and dad for Ethan, determined to give him the best life possible despite our loss. I met Mark 3 years after David's passing. He was divorced with a teenage daughter, Zoe. Mark and Linda's marriage had ended badly, with Linda moving across the country for a new job and leaving Zoe primarily in Mark's care. Mark was struggling to balance his career as a marketing executive with being a single dad to a rebellious teenager. Our relationship progressed quickly, and we married after a year of dating. I was cautious about introducing a new father figure into Ethan's life, but Mark seemed to genuinely care for him. Ethan, then 14, was polite but reserved with Mark. Zoe, 16 at the time, was openly hostile towards me and Ethan from the start. When we got married, Mark moved into our home. We decided to keep our finances separate, partly due to the complex situation with David's estate and partly because it seemed simpler given our previous marriages. I continued to manage the house and Ethan's trust, while Mark paid for half of our living expenses. The early years of our marriage were challenging. Zoe's behavior became increasingly problematic. She started skipping school, experimenting with alcohol and drugs, and lashing out at home. Mark always made excuses for her, blaming her mother's absence and the stress of adapting to a blended family. I tried to be understanding, but it was hard watching Zoe's destructive behavior impact our household. Meanwhile, Ethan threw himself into his studies. He was determined to become a doctor, inspired by the medical team that had cared for his father. He worked incredibly hard, earning a full scholarship to a prestigious university for his undergraduate degree. As the years passed, the differences between Ethan and Zoe became more pronounced. Ethan graduated at the top of his class and was accepted into medical school. Zoe barely finished high school and drifted through a series of part-time jobs, never seeming to find her footing. Mark continued to coddle Zoe, always ready with an excuse for her lack of direction. When she announced she wanted to go to college at 20, he was overjoyed, seeing it as a sign she was finally growing up. I was more skeptical but supported Mark's decision to pay for her education. Ethan met Emma, 23F, during his second year of medical school. She was studying to become a pediatric nurse, and they bonded over their shared passion for healthcare. I was thrilled to see Ethan so happy, especially knowing how guarded he'd been with his heart since losing his dad. Zoe, on the other hand, dropped out of college after 3 semesters. She moved back home, claiming she needed time to find herself. Mark allowed this, never pushing her to get a job or contribute to the household. This caused tension between us, as I felt we were enabling her irresponsible behavior. Last year, Ethan and Emma got married in a small ceremony. Mark, Zoe, and I attended, along with Emma's family. Zoe made several snide comments throughout the event, clearly jealous of the attention Ethan was receiving. Mark brushed it off as sibling rivalry, but I was embarrassed by her behavior. A few months ago, Ethan and Emma shared the exciting news that they were expecting a baby. They had been living in a small apartment near the hospital where Ethan was doing his residency, but with a child on the way, they needed more space. Without hesitation, I offered them our guest house. It's a separate structure on our property, with its own entrance and amenities. I thought it would be perfect for the young family, giving them space and privacy while still being close enough for us to help with the baby. Ethan was grateful but insisted on contributing. He offered to pay for utilities and property taxes, even though I told him it wasn't necessary given his co-ownership of the property. Emma was touched by the offer and started making plans for the nursery. When I announced this arrangement to Mark and Zoe, I was unprepared for Zoe's reaction. She exploded, saying it wasn't fair that Ethan got the guest house when she had wanted to move in there. I was shocked. She had never expressed any interest in the guest house before. Mark tried to calm her down, But she stormed out, slamming doors and yelling about favoritism. Over the next few weeks, Zoe's attitude became increasingly hostile. She made cutting remarks about Ethan and Emma whenever they visited, rolled her eyes at any mention of the baby, and picked fights with me constantly. Mark kept saying she just needed time to adjust to the idea. Ethan and Emma started slowly moving their things into the guest house, working around their busy schedules at the hospital. They were excited about setting up the nursery, with Emma's colleagues gifting them baby items and Ethan's grandfather's handmade crib taking center stage. Yesterday, I went to check on their progress, thinking I might help organize a bit while they were at work. What I found left me speechless. The entire guest house was trashed. Walls were covered in spray-painted messages like "Mommy's favorite" and "Spoiled brat." Furniture was slashed open, glass was shattered everywhere, and the nursery was destroyed. The crib was smashed to pieces, baby clothes were strewn about and ruined, and the walls were covered in cruel messages about Ethan and Emma. I was shaking as I called Mark home from work. We found Zoe passed out in her room, empty bottles of alcohol around her and a can of spray paint still in her hand. When we managed to wake her, she was belligerent, slurring that she had given the guest house the makeover it deserved because it wasn't fair that Ethan and Emma got to live there. I saw red. All the years of pent-up frustration with Zoe's behavior, all the times I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace with Mark, it all came pouring out. I told Zoe she had 24 hours to get out of my house. Mark protested, saying she had nowhere to go, but I stood firm. I told him that if he didn't like it, he could leave too. Mark is now staying at a hotel, saying I'm being too harsh and need to calm down before making decisions. Ethan and Emma are devastated about the destruction, especially the loss of the crib, which was one of the few tangible connections Ethan had left to his father. They're staying with Emma's parents for now. I feel terrible about the rift this has caused in my marriage, but I can't forgive what Zoe did. Am I the asshole for kicking her out? Should I have been more understanding of her feelings? I'm at a loss and could use some outside perspectives. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the incident with Zoe in the guest house, and I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your comments helped me stand my ground during a very difficult time. After I kicked Zoe out, she went to stay with her mother, Linda. We soon discovered that Zoe had told Linda a completely different version of events. According to Zoe, I had always mistreated her and finally kicked her out for no reason, destroying her relationship with her father in the process. Linda, who has always been quick to believe the worst about Mark and me, called Mark in a fury, demanding that he fix the situation. Mark came home the day after the incident, still upset but willing to talk. I could see he was torn between his roles as Zoe's father and my husband. I showed him the full extent of the damage to the guest house, which he hadn't seen in the chaos of the previous day. I also reminded him of Zoe's drunken admission. Seeing the destruction firsthand, especially the ruined nursery and the smashed crib, seemed to finally open Mark's eyes to the severity of Zoe's actions. We had a long, painful conversation about our parenting styles and the issues in our blended family. Mark admitted that he had been too lenient with Zoe, always making excuses for her behavior. He confessed that he felt guilty about her mother leaving and had tried to compensate by being an easy parent. I shared my frustration at always feeling like the bad guy when it came to Zoe, and how her behavior had affected our family dynamics over the years. After much discussion, Mark agreed that Zoe needed to face real consequences for her actions this time. It was a difficult decision for him, but he realized that continuing to enable her would only hurt her in the long run. Ethan and Emma, after taking some time to process the shock, decided to press charges against Zoe for property damage. It wasn't an easy choice for them, especially for Ethan, who remembered Zoe as a young teenager when our families first blended. But the deliberate destruction of their baby's nursery and the irreplaceable loss of the crib his grandfather had made crossed a line they couldn't ignore. The police came to take statements and photographs of the damage. Zoe was arrested but released on bail, which Mark paid. He's conflicted about it, feeling like he's betraying Zoe by allowing her to face legal consequences, but understanding why Ethan and Emma want to pursue this course of action. An unexpected development came from Ethan's paternal family. When they heard about what happened to the crib Ethan's grandfather had made, they were outraged. Ethan's uncle Jack, who runs a successful contracting business, offered to completely renovate the guest house for free. He said it was the least they could do to honor Ethan's father's memory and to support Ethan as he starts his own family. This generous offer brought up a lot of emotions for everyone. For me, it was a poignant reminder of the strong family bonds David and I had built, and how his family has continued to be there for Ethan and me even years after his passing. For Ethan, it was a touching connection to his father at a time when he's about to become a father himself. Even Mark was moved by the gesture, saying it made him realize how much damage Zoe's actions had really caused. Mark and I have started couples counseling to work through the issues this situation has brought to light. He's realized that his enabling of Zoe has caused problems not just for her, but for our marriage and our entire family dynamic. He's committed to making changes and supporting my decisions regarding consequences for Zoe's behavior. Zoe herself has been notably absent from any attempts at reconciliation. She hasn't apologized or shown any remorse for her actions. Instead, she's been posting on social media about how toxic our family is and how she's the victim in all of this. It's frustrating to see, but I'm trying to focus on supporting Ethan and Emma and repairing my relationship with Mark rather than engaging with Zoe's narrative. The renovation of the guest house has started, and Jack estimates it will be ready before Emma gives birth. In the meantime, Ethan and Emma are staying with her parents, who have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. As for Mark and me, we're taking things day by day. The counseling is helping, but there's a lot of work to be done. We're both committed to healing our family and moving forward, but it's clear that our relationship with Zoe will never be the same. It's not an easy road ahead, but I'm cautiously hopeful that we can come out stronger as a family. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's been a great comfort during this challenging time. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and things have taken some unexpected turns. The renovation of the guest house is almost complete, and I have to say, Ethan's Uncle Jack and his team have done an amazing job. The place looks even better than before, and they've added some special touches that I know will mean a lot to Ethan and Emma. The legal situation with Zoe has become more complicated. Her court-appointed lawyer is trying to argue that Zoe was under extreme emotional distress due to years of perceived favoritism towards Ethan. They're pushing for a plea deal that would involve mandatory counseling and rehab instead of jail time, citing Zoe's substance abuse issues as a mitigating factor. This has put Ethan and Emma in a difficult position. While they want justice for the destruction of their property and the emotional toll it's taken on them, they're also worried about the stress of a drawn-out legal battle. Emma is in her 3rd trimester now, and her doctor has cautioned her about keeping her stress levels down. They're torn between pursuing the case and wanting to focus on the upcoming birth of their child. Mark has been making genuine efforts to change his enabling behavior. He's been attending parenting classes focused on adult children and has even started volunteering at a youth center to gain perspective on healthy family dynamics. It's been challenging for him, especially given the complicated emotions surrounding Zoe's situation, but I'm proud of the progress he's making. Last week, we had an unexpected visitor. Zoe showed up at our door, tearful and asking to talk. Mark was ready to welcome her with open arms, but I was more cautious. We agreed to hear her out, but I made it clear that she wasn't welcome to stay. During our conversation, Zoe broke down and admitted that she had been struggling with substance abuse for years, something we had suspected but she had always denied. She said the destruction of the guest house was fueled by a mix of drugs, alcohol, and long-simmering jealousy towards Ethan. She begged for another chance, asking if she could move back in and promising to make things right. I could see Mark wavering, his paternal instincts warring with the progress he's made in setting boundaries. After a long discussion, we decided that we couldn't let Zoe move back in, but we would support her in getting professional help. We researched reputable rehabilitation centers and offered to pay for her treatment. Zoe initially resisted, insisting she could handle her issues on her own. But we made it clear that this was the only way we would consider helping her in the future. Eventually, she agreed to enter a 60-day inpatient program. When we told Ethan and Emma about this development, their reactions were understandably mixed. They appreciated that Zoe was seeking help but made it clear they needed time and space before considering any kind of reconciliation. The wounds from her actions are still fresh, and with the baby due soon, they want to focus on their growing family. As for Mark and me, we're cautiously optimistic. We're continuing with our couples counseling and working on presenting a united front when it comes to family issues. It's a difficult journey, but we're committed to making it work. The baby is due in just a few weeks, and despite all the drama, there's an air of excitement in our family. We're focusing on preparing for our grandchild's arrival and hoping that this new life will bring some healing to our fractured family dynamics. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I'm writing this with a mix of emotions. Our family has gone through significant changes, some joyful and others bittersweet. First, the wonderful news: Emma gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Lily, 6 weeks ago. Despite all the stress leading up to the birth, everything went smoothly. Ethan and Emma moved into the renovated guest house a week before Lily arrived, and they're settling into their new roles as parents. The guest house looks beautiful, and Jack added a special touch. He incorporated some of the wood from Ethan's grandfather's crib into a wall hanging for the nursery, preserving that connection to Ethan's father. Seeing Ethan as a father has been an incredibly emotional experience. He's taken to it naturally, and I often catch glimpses of David in the way he handles Lily. It's bittersweet, but mostly just fills me with joy. Mark and I are loving our new roles as grandparents, and it's brought a new dimension to our relationship. Now, for the more complicated parts of our family situation. Zoe completed her 60-day rehabilitation program and has been sober for 3 months. Her therapist recommended she transition to a halfway house rather than coming home, which she agreed to. She's been attending NA meetings regularly and seems committed to her recovery. The legal case was resolved through a plea deal. Zoe pleaded guilty to criminal mischief and agreed to pay restitution for the damages not covered by insurance. She also has to complete 200 hours of community service and remain in treatment for substance abuse. Ethan and Emma agreed to this outcome, feeling it was the best way to move forward without the stress of a trial. Mark has continued to work on his enabling tendencies. He's been much more supportive of my decisions and has maintained healthy boundaries with Zoe. Our relationship has improved significantly as a result, and we're finding a new balance in our marriage. Last week, Zoe asked if she could visit to meet Lily. It was a difficult decision, but after discussing it with Ethan and Emma, they agreed to a short, supervised visit. The meeting was tense and awkward. Zoe seemed uncomfortable around the baby, barely holding Lily before passing her back to Emma. She left early, saying it was too much for her. After the visit, Zoe called Mark and said she felt like she didn't belong in our family anymore. She's decided to move to another state for a fresh start when she completes her time at the halfway house. Mark is heartbroken but understands it might be for the best. He's promised to support her from a distance while respecting our family's boundaries. As for me, I have mixed feelings about Zoe's decision. Part of me is relieved that she's choosing to start fresh elsewhere, as the trust that was broken will take a long time to rebuild, if ever. Another part of me feels sad for Mark and the relationship he's lost with his daughter. It's a complex situation with no easy answers. Ethan and Emma are thriving as new parents, and our focus is on supporting them and enjoying our time with Lily. They've been incredibly resilient throughout this whole ordeal, and seeing them with Lily reminds me of the joy that family can bring. Mark and I are in a much better place in our marriage. The challenges we faced have forced us to confront long-standing issues and learn to communicate more effectively. We're both committed to moving forward and creating a healthy environment for our growing family. Looking back on this tumultuous year, I realize that sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones. Standing firm on my boundaries with Zoe was difficult, but it led to positive changes for everyone involved. While our family's future is still uncertain in many ways, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're all on a healthier path forward. As we navigate this new chapter in our lives, with a new grandchild and evolving family dynamics, I'm reminded of something David used to say: family isn't always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs, the ones who accept you for who you are, support you, and love you no matter what. I'm holding on to that wisdom as we move forward, focusing on nurturing the relationships that bring positivity and love into our lives. The journey ahead won't be easy, but I'm hopeful. We're taking it one day at a time, celebrating the small victories and learning from our mistakes.